Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski, the second Pole in history to travel to space after Mirosław Hermaszewski has safely returned to Earth. The private Axiom Space mission, AX-4, concluded successfully as the Dragon capsule named Grace splashed down in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego. Uznański-Wiśniewski, who exited the capsule with a confident step and a smile, will undergo a comprehensive recovery program which will include monitoring by the European Space Agency's medical team, including physicians, physiotherapists and physical trainers, as he adapts to Earth's gravity. After undergoing initial medical checks aboard a helicopter, all astronauts were flown to land and then made their way to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. There, the Polish astronaut will continue his journey to Cologne, Germany, where he will undergo further medical evaluations at the European Astronaut Center and the German Aerospace Center's envoy facility, one of the leading centers for astronaut health and rehabilitation. Greenlighting the EU's beleaguered 18th sanctions package against Russia is a priority for the Foreign Affairs Council meeting in the Belgian capital on Tuesday. And while there is optimism that the package will finally get the unanimous support it requires to be implemented, questions remain around the efficacy of the oil price cap provision in particular. We are joined live now by our EU correspondent Angela Skujins from Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. What stage are those negotiations at right now regarding Russian aggression against Ukraine?
Good afternoon. So the unofficial word that we've heard from the bowels of the European Council building in Brussels is that Malta and Slovakia have maintained their veto against the 18th sanctions package spearheaded by the EU against Russia. However, this is unofficial. So far, we are still waiting for confirmation from those official channels, particularly the European Council, as well as the High Representative Kaja Kallas in particular. But that 18th sanctions package was first proposed last month by the top diplomat herself, as well as the European Council, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The aim thrust there being targeting Russia's military, financial and energy sectors, with that oil price cap being a central pillar of that sanctions package. But we know that Malta in particular was against this measure. But what we've heard from our own sources in the Belgian capital over the last few days is that negotiations that have occurred has given some flexibility to the measure, but we know that the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico stated as recent as yesterday that he would continue to block the 18th sanctions package unless the European Commission supports that Central European country in terms of its energy woes. But the oil price cap in particular is very important. We heard the High Representative state that it is well and truly alive, but let's take a listen to what she had to say regarding that measure before that meeting kicked off this morning.
We are working on this oil price cap. It's alive, so hopefully we'll get an agreement. Now, like I said to you before, even if the Americans are not aboard, but the other G7 countries are on board, then we will move on with this.
The big question here is that if those 27 EU member states support the 18th sanctions package as well as the oil price cap revision, whatever iteration that revision is, being scaled down from $60 US per barrel to 45, or that flexibility mechanism, which was reported by Reuters to be a 15% revision, it really depends on the buy-in of the US President Donald Trump, whether he wants to support or implement this measure. But we do know that in the last 24 hours, we've heard some quite strong overtures from the Oval Office, particularly that US President Donald Trump will send those Patriot air defence missile systems to Ukraine, with the EU footing the bill there. We heard from various foreign ministers in the Belgian capital today celebrating this. However, they were critical on the timeline of delivery, particularly US President Donald Trump stating he would implement those secondary tariffs on Russia within 50 days. This was particularly strident criticisms from those Baltic foreign ministers in particular. Let's take a listen to what the Lithuanian Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys had to say regarding the pace of Washington and the EU in particular.
Europe has to stop dragging its feet. We have to proceed with sanctions and then further support to Ukraine. After yesterday's announcements, we see that there is still leadership from United States, and we have to also to gather ourselves and do the same to adopt the 18th package with oil price cap in it being lowered and start preparing 19th package already.
Yes, so quite ambitious language there from that foreign minister on the 19th sanctions package, but perhaps too soon to say. We really need that formal announcement regarding the 18th. If it is not approved today, it could be approved tomorrow or at a General Affairs Council meeting on Friday. But there is a press conference scheduled for 4:45. Hopefully we'll have some more concrete information for you then.
Thanks very much, Angela Skujins, delivering the latest from Brussels. Many thanks. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has sharply criticized US President Donald Trump's recent ultimatum to the Kremlin, calling it theatrical, while asserting that Russia remains unfazed by the threat. On Monday, Trump announced that unless a peace agreement is reached between Russia and Ukraine within 50 days, the United States will impose severe tariffs. The tariffs could reach as high as 100%, targeting Russian exports and the country's trading partners. In response, Medvedev, currently deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council and President Vladimir Putin's close ally, posted a defiant message on social media stating, "The world shuddered, expecting the consequences. Belligerent Europe was disappointed. Russia didn't care." European leaders offered mixed reactions. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas acknowledged the firmness of Trump's stance, but expressed concern over the tight timeline. According to a report by Axios, Vladimir Putin told Donald Trump during the July 3rd phone call he plans a new escalation in Ukraine over the coming 60 days. As stated by multiple unnamed sources familiar with the call, the Russian president aims to reach administrative borders of the occupied regions of Ukraine Putin considers his own. Citing unnamed sources familiar with the call between Putin and Trump, Axios reported that Putin told US President he will escalate military operations in Ukraine. During their July 3rd conversation, Putin reportedly said that Moscow intended to continue its offensive operations until it secured the full administrative borders of the occupied regions of Ukraine. Following their call, Trump contacted his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, telling him that Putin will not stop offensive operations until Russia occupies 100% of Ukraine's regions he perceives as his own. 5 people have been reported killed and 53 injured from the latest Russian strikes on Ukraine overnight. Monday, among the injured are 4 children, according to Ukrainian authorities.
The Russian attacks were aimed mainly at civilian infrastructure. Among the targets in the Sumy region were a university and a medical facility. The projectiles also hit civilian targets in the oblasts of Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, Kherson and Zaporizhia.
U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine Keith Kellogg is continuing his week-long visit to Ukraine. So far, the American diplomat met with President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss ways to boost Ukraine's air defenses, such as Kyiv purchasing weapons with European help. While in Kyiv, Kellogg laid flowers at the Wall of Remembrance of the Fallen for Ukraine, a monument dedicated to those who have perished fighting Russia since 2014. His visit to the monument took place after talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and the country's Defense Minister Rustem Umerov. The officials talked about joint projects for localizing arms production in Ukraine and Europe, including air defense systems. They also discussed putting more economic pressure on Moscow, with Umerov saying that the Russian energy sector is a key source of funding for the war in Ukraine. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has commented on further support for Ukraine's air defenses. While on a visit to the United States, Pistorius announced that Germany may purchase 2 Patriot systems to be delivered straight to Ukraine.
A few weeks ago, I spoke to Pete Hegseth about the subject, and during the discussion I suggested that Germany buy 2 Patriot systems from the Americans and send them directly to Ukraine, knowing that we, in our situation concerning the Patriots, their maintenance and distribution, are not able to deliver a new system. but we are ready and all agree that Ukraine needs more of these systems, and that therefore justifies the purchase of 2 of these Patriot systems.
Hungary has demanded action from the European Union following a report that a dual Hungarian-Ukrainian citizen was beaten to death during forced mobilization. The Hungarian foreign minister has since called the Ukrainian conscript system a manhunt. Peter Szijjártó's criticism follows similar comments made by Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán earlier last week, who said that a country where people are killed during forced mobilization cannot be a member of the European Union. The report of a forced mobilization of a Hungarian citizen has caused a diplomatic row between Hungary and Ukraine. Ukraine rejects the accusation, stating that the conscript died of a blood clot not connected with violence.
The whole calculation of budget regulation of European Union must be changed.
The founder of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, has unveiled plans to invest hundreds of billions of dollars into massive AI data centers in the US, marking a significant push in the company's quest for superintelligence.
Meta is set to make an unusually big investment in artificial intelligence, with Mark Zuckerberg announcing that the company will build huge multi-gigawatt data centers in the US. The first of these facilities, called Prometheus, is expected to come online in 2026, with one of the sites set to cover an area nearly the size of Manhattan. Zuckerberg stated that these data centers will be designed to house AI technology capable of surpassing human intelligence. Meta's substantial investment in these massive data centers is expected to span several years, with the company spending hundreds of billions of dollars to power AI breakthroughs in reaching superintelligence. The announcement has been met with optimism, with Meta's stock rising 1% following the news.
The Czech Republic and the UK are exploring opportunities to acquire small modular reactors. On Monday, the 2 countries signed a memorandum of understanding that could see 6 British small modular reactors exported to the Central European country. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer met with his Czech counterpart Petr Fiala on Monday to discuss the initiative. The agreement follows both countries to harness nuclear power and related technologies to drive prosperity, energy security, and highly skilled job opportunities. Last month, Britain pledged £2.5 billion to build small modular reactors on the British Isles. Rolls-Royce was selected to build Britain's first small modular reactors, while the state-owned Great British Energy is expected to sign a similar agreement later this year. Meanwhile, the Czech electricity producer CEZ said it would take a 20% stake in Rolls-Royce's small modular reactor business. The CEZ also plans to deploy 6 units of the small modular reactors, which would produce up to 3 gigawatts of power, capable of powering around 1 million homes. The Taiwanese army is holding its annual military drills. The maneuvers, lauded as the most comprehensive ever, are meant to prepare a response to any military threat from China.
Taiwanese forces are preparing to repel both an amphibious invasion and a maritime operation that could be carried out by the Chinese Coast Guard. The drills are being conducted using equipment such as speedboats, drones, mortars and javelin missiles. Called the Han Kuang, the exercises are being conducted for the 41st time.
Another night of clashes between anti-immigration protesters and North African migrants and riot police took place in Spanish Torre Pacheco. On Monday evening, mass demonstrators filled the streets of the town as armed police officers fired rubber bullets to manage the unrest, which spilled well into the night. After 3 nights of clashes, Spanish police arrested 10 people in southeastern Spain. Demonstrators in Torre Pacheco demanded justice and peace in the city. The protests stemmed from an attack last week on a man in his 60s that left him injured and recovering at home. A spokesperson for the Spanish Interior Ministry said late on Monday that the suspected perpetrator had been arrested in the northern Basque country. Previously, authorities said they had detained 2 foreigners suspected of involvement in the assault. Speaking to local radio, Spanish Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska attributed the violent protests to anti-immigration rhetoric from far-right parties such as Vox. On the other hand, the party's leader, Santiago Abascal, denied any responsibility for the incidents, saying that the government's migration policies were to blame and not his party. And that concludes Midday Report here on TVP World. Thanks for joining us and stay tuned for more on our channel. Goodbye.